Esperamos que hayan tenido un satisfactorio almuerzo. En el contexto de lo cotidiano, en el contexto doméstico, las conversaciones más importantes suceden en la mesa de comida después de que se ha engullido todo lo posible. En dominicano y en algunas otras partes del Caribe se le dice sobremesa. De ahí el nombre de este encuentro que tendremos ahora. Es una especie de diálogo entre dos personas del cual nosotros seremos espectadores. Estamos hoy reunidos acá con Lise Ragbir y Sandra Vivas. Adelante.
No? Okay, ahora sí.
Oh, so formal for informal, talking into a microphone. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this intimate, clearly not, conversation. My name is Lise Ragbir.
And I am Sandra Vivas.
So this is new for us. I guess my first question for you, Sandra, would be, this is your first time at Tilting Axis, correct?
Yes.
Any first impressions?
Oh, well, so many first impressions. I'm kind of like overwhelmed. I guess the first one was like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome. I got invited to come here. Right, like it's a huge privilege, and I'm immensely thankful to the people that organize this, that I know, like Annalie Davis and Holly Bino, and the people that I don't know, that is probably most of the people that help organize this. You know? You know the list, they were already mentioned, but I'm very, very thankful to be here. So, so among those feelings, I also feel like, you know, who am I to be here? You know, like I am a marginalized artist in a tiny, insignificant island. I don't qualify for this. You know, like I feel I'm from Dominica, but I'm actually from Venezuela. When I was finally accepted as someone from Dominica, in Dominica, I had to move to Barbados because the hurricane destroyed my home in Dominica, and now in Barbados, everybody's like, oh, you're from Venezuela. There's a situation in Venezuela, and I'm like, no. So I guess it's like still this feeling of not being exactly sure. Like when I moved to Dominica, it was because of love and because I was trying to escape the situation. So it's, I wasn't like, I choose to be in the Caribbean. So it's a lot of emotions, but mostly feeling like displaced.
You bring up a lot of important pieces in that, you know, the notion of who belongs here. As we all know, you know, kind of questions and notions of identity in the Caribbean are fluid and changing, so who gets to claim this conference, this region, even those beyond the region? And I know that that's something that I've heard people talk about in each iteration of this, you know, of this conference. You also talked about displacement, which is another big piece. And I do want to go back afterwards maybe and talk about who belongs here and imposter sort of syndrome. But since you ended on displacement, I want to talk. Nora said something. Is Nora here? Nora said something about the people being tied to the land. It's an important consideration. You know, we get our energy and our strength and our roots as people tied to the land. So what does that mean for you, for me, for us who move about so much? For you, you know, in Dominica in particular, you saw the land literally sort of move out from under you. So what do some of those considerations feel like now?
Well, I had been having this interest in history. So I was living for 9 years in Dominica before the hurricane, and the first 4 years were really, really hard because I was still trying to be like a conceptual feminist performance video artist, and nobody understood. I couldn't even talk to anybody about what I did. And then I decided that in spite of Dominica not even had one single movie theater, that I wanted to be a filmmaker. And I started to make short films. So one of the books that saved from my destroyed library, what's on my bedside table, is of the Maroons, which is a topic that I had been interested in a long while, and now I have finally decided that I am a contemporary Maroon, and that's my connection to this. You know, I claim I'm a Maroon. Yeah. And I'm doing a project that incorporates the history of Dominica, and I want to make a puppet kind of theater, but in the form of a film using drawn puppets. So that is a lot easier than stop motion that we kind of saw with Nora. Because you don't have to film. Although I used to think I might use still, whatever. I'm a contemporary Maroon. Let's leave it there.
Is the maroonness, the maroon piece, is part of that a nomadic consideration?
It's nomadic, but it's also the connection to the land. You know, that is my connection to the land. So I am also, you know, someone who was displaced and, you know, put in this context. But many people have asked me, like, how the people, like, surviving in Dominica. I mean, I don't think people can imagine the vastness of the destruction. And I think the reason I'm still trembling for me is that we still are Maroon people, because Dominica was the last island to be colonized. And when the British came, you know, there were all these, you know, different structures already in place. You know, the first plantation owner was black man. So there is, the mulatto society was like buoyant, you know, there was, which was completely different than what happened in the other islands. And there were these communities in the forest that survive just with the land. And how people are doing now when there are no jobs, when there are no communications, how they're surviving is because there are these structures that had survived in spite of everything. I mean, most of the people have a garden, and that garden is what feeds them. You know, they too, people like immediately were okay, back to planting. And that is something that even I, who consider myself a serial plant killer, I couldn't live without my, you know, garden. I have, you know, food in my garden. And you don't need money to live in Dominica, you exchange. Yeah.
Let's see, what else can we talk about? Pretend I'm eating a piece of bread.
I wanna say something about the Sobremesa. And it's not a Dominican term. It's a word that has no translation in any other language. And it's a Spanish word, and it literally means that conversation you have after you eat, still with the dirty plates at the table. So it's not, sorry, it's not just a Dominican thing. All Spanish speakers have sobremesas. And I thought it was gonna be at the mesa. So, because it's, and at the table. Sobremesa means on the table. So I thought it was going to be at the table because it's how the sobremesa on the table means on the table, sobremesa. So yeah. And I wanted to mention some things. Oh, I got the wrong book. This is terrible. Okay. I don't know. Somewhere there in my backpack or not is the red book that we were given here.
I can say something while
yes.
Annalie fetches the correct book. We met yesterday in the airport. We both had a long layover coming up from different parts of the world. And we both did talk about sort of the inconvenience of traveling, and also what it means to have to come up from the Caribbean to Miami to go back down. And I don't know if Sandra's listening to me.
No.
But in talking for many, the travel, for some people was an easy up and down flight getting here. But the travel becomes sort of an important consideration, an important part of the conversations that take place here at Tilting Access, because in a lot of ways it is about access. It's about access to other islands, other parts of the world, other curators, other artists. So I wonder if you can talk maybe a little bit about what access means, what tilting access, not access, what is the value in the access that tilting access provides to you?
Well, I want to see that too. First of all, especially Dominica, it's so isolated. I mean, it has been really hard to just continue creating and repeating to myself, I'm still an artist. It doesn't matter if, I'm not in the big metropolis, the new, capitals of the neo-colonial times, right? So that it's, this is an opportunity, I hope, to demarginalize, but it's extremely complicated. If it was difficult, for anyone from, Barbados to come here, or imagine from Dominica is one more ride, and it's everywhere. It's expensive to go, absolutely everywhere. So I hope it's an opportunity for us to create those rhizomatic connections of create new ways of connecting and decentralizing the circuits of art making. Yeah, I mean that's my hope, and
that makes sense to me, and as from someone who's coming from outside the region, also that rhizomatic connection feels important, and it also goes back to sort of the original talk about conversation about feeling impostery. Who gets a seat at this table when we're talking about regional efforts? And I don't know the answer to that, but it's something that's definitely always on my mind. Each year we each bring a different consideration to this conversation, but it sounds sort of cliche to say, well, that's what makes it rich, but it truly is what makes it rich, and I think it's something that is, it's not unique to the region, but all of the different languages, ways we look, the ways we hold cultures in each of our unique cultures is something. The uniqueness of all of that collectively becomes something really important.
Well, I already feel immensely inspired by all what I've heard from the very beginning, rescuing our traditions, acknowledging the palimpsestos, or that there is history that has been erased, just researching of the Maroon histories. All what we have is what the British wrote, and they want to embellish the British, extermination of the Maroon culture, right? That's all we have and you have to read between the lines, and you have to, get how Nora was saying. I think it was beautiful. Says like, if I am an archaeologist, I want to. She said, I wanna search what the feeling is more than understanding it. I feel. I don't even know why I'm here. Like I feel like it's like wow, right? Because I'm still a marginal artist. When I was in Venezuela, I was starting to get a bit of recognition and acknowledgement, and I left in a very important point of my career, and then it was just like, kind of disappear because I was not in the circuits anymore. I was not in Arbo anymore. Because I was so far and so difficult to be reached, Now we have all technologies that are allowing to break that, and I'm, trying to the best I can to do it, but I'm still feel like, I'm still the same marginal artist working in the periphery, even if we're trying to break those molds,
But do you think that the moving, from Venezuela to Dominica to here, do you think that even though it could feel as if it halts your process each time, do you think that that process of moving fuels any part of your artistic practice?
Well, it has definitely diverted it in other ways, like in different ways. Like now me saying, like, I want to be a filmmaker, me finding ways of narrating a story, telling a story in a, easy to understand way. I wanted to do a didactic piece that still conveys that feeling. Of course, I don't know, it's interesting too because being now away, I'm now living in Barbados after the hurricane. It's kind of, it made my feelings of belonging to Dominica even bigger, and deeper, yeah. So.
You were talking about the didactic piece that you're working on. That's the maroon piece.
Yes, yes.
And it made me think, how history is sometimes thought of as didactic for certain people, and something that Michi said earlier, and I wrote it down. But how many histories do we have to lift? And I might have got it wrong as it was being interpreted. But how many histories do we have to lift to learn of the other ones? Is that something like that?
I love translation because it always creates new ideas.
Yeah, it sounds very poetic. It might not have sounded poetic in Spanish, but it sounded poetic here. But I really love that idea of how, peeling back one history or uncovering one story can lead to something else, which is sort of what has happened with this maroon story for you. It started with maps, right? Sort of looking at the maps as you kind of dove into these other histories. Is that right?
Well, it's just that to understand the Maroons wars, and there were more than once, and to understand why they happen, the way they happen, you have to understand the topography. And the topography of Dominica, it's very complicated. It's very mountainous. It was not mapped until the mid-50s of the 20th century when the first airplanes went over it. So it was this terra incognita that nobody knew exactly, but there are some, pieces of history here and there that tell you like more or less where they were. But I wanted to understand exactly where they were, and what were the movements, and how, when they got cornered in a certain part, why they lost the war. Like you have to understand the map, and it's very complex to understand it. So I've been drawing many maps because the topography is very complex. So I'm trying to simplify it for myself, so with just only the big mountains, which are a lot, but but to make it more simple and easy to understand. Yeah, because the map is not the topography, right? Just
Right.
yeah. I haven't found my book. It's not there.
Oh, you haven't? Do you
No, I
want to
think
try
it's in the bag, in the white bag.
Do you want to try and remember it?
Well,
Without the
I don't know if it's there. It will be nice. Yes. I'm being here with the lights. It's just so scary. It's just like I was hoping it was gonna be at the table. No, like
It's the wrong book.
No,
It's the,
it's
no, I'm kidding. It's the right book.
Yeah, I like very much what Giscard said, Giscard Bouchot, that we're open for dreaming. I'm left with that, and I love Rita Indiana Hernandez when she talked about the do-it-yourself, when she reinvented Garcia Lorca as a skater, a posthumous skater. Just I love that image, and the do-it-yourself, which is what I'm doing with my, self. I talk to people in the film. It's you need a script, and I don't have a script. I just want to go ahead and do it because I don't have anyone else to do it, to finance it. I'm left with the ongoing pilgrimage that Nora talked about, and the one thing that I loved is that she also mentioned the kindness. She talked about kindness and love, and one thing that I feel that we need in the arts that I come here looking for too, and this is gonna sound so hippie and so corny, but I'm also looking for love, for support, for this emotional thing that we need to, because we're really, as beautiful as it sounds, the idea of the water uniting us, it's separating me, and I don't want to feel disconnected, I need this environment. I need to feel like I'm not alone, like we are together in this. Estamos juntos en esto. We are together in this. Yeah.
I think that we are open for dreaming is also a part of that. It's this opening up in how you have to be open to love and to be open to dreaming. There's a vulnerability that is implied in both of those things, and whether you choose to be courageous and sort of look for those things or back away, because that's scary. Love and dreams. Those can both go very wrong very quickly. So, there's a choice. We have to come to those things, to the things that can bring us sort of the most satisfaction, but we do have to come to it with a degree of vulnerability, I feel like.
Well, I recently went through a very a strong, vulnerable episode in my life, which is Hurricane Maria. I'm sorry to be monothematic. I'm not over it. It's still in process. Don't tell me how it's going to become an artwork. I don't know. But it has, I cannot imagine how vulnerable I felt that for 8 hours, I was fearing for my life and the ones of my loved ones. My husband got hurt, but on the other hand, it gives you this huge power to have survived something so huge, and it's I was afraid of flying, and then I got into a helicopter, and it's wow, I don't care about a helicopter, I'm good, I'm no longer afraid of flying. Isn't it incredible? Because I was so terrified. because the hurricane, you know, and I'm like, I'm so afraid of so many things, including being here, but it's like I have, you know, like I survived Hurricane Maria, you know, nothing compares to that, you know. So it's just like also this thing is like time is limited, my time and plan in this dimension, in this planet. So I want to do things, you know, and I care less about those, you know, voices that I still have that, you know, tell me you are not from the right crowd, you are not this, you're not that, or you're not capable of whatever. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry, but I don't have a lot of time. I don't know if I can get killed tomorrow. You know, it's like I wanna exercise my right to dream, like Gaston Bachelard said.
I have no idea what time it is.
Yeah, how much time we have? So, okay, it's time for my micro performance, maybe?
Oh, is it that, really? Okay.
Yeah? No? Because it's
well,
at 3:45.
Can we?
Yes, sure.
I'm going to just set this up a little bit.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little about your family? I know you have a micro performance that you're going to do, but it really does have some ties to your family, which feels important to...
Okay, what part of the family history you
I guess the part that relates to the performance.
Okay. I was raised with red diapers. That means like I grew up in an extreme leftish, you know, family, and I was deeply, personally disenchanted when my sister went to live in Cuba it was supposed to be a 1-year-long scholarship, and she lasted 3 months. And that was like the first slap on the face of a huge dream that I had as a child. You know, my parents, they were both in the guerrillas. You know, it wasn't that host stream they were not like peace and love for the left. They were serious. My mom was a very good friend of the ex-wife of Che Guevara, and she lived in Cuba. And so anyhow, so this, and I grew up believing that I could be a ballerina. And I was very bad. It's very, very bad. So that's how I became a performance artist. Right? The typical thing. And so, yes. Because I thought that it was going to be a sobremesa on the table. At the table, I had designed Sobremesa performance at a table, right? So it's a micro performance because I thought, you know, I also had to think of something I could physically do with a full belly because I'm usually very acrobatic in my bad performance artist, you know, skills. And so I would have to describe you, right? So who the characters are, if you don't know. It's Marx, Engels, Lenin, and Stalin. Yeah? Okay, I'm going to start now. Cameras. Microphone. Tan 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 taran tan 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 taran tan 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 taratara tan 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 taratata tan 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 taratata tan 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 taratara tan tan taratara tan tan taratara tan 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 taran tan 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 taran tan 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 taratara tan 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 taratata tan 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 taratata tan 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 taratara tan tan taratara tan tan taratata tan tan.
I think that's all the time we have. Thank you guys for joining us in the informal, formal conversation. Thank you.